ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Rotten Tomatoes Binge Battle. This is the show where we have two combatants from the world of online punditry, and they're going to come together and go tete-a-tete in an argument that today might break Facebook because it's Game of Thrones, folks. That's what we're arguing here today. All sorts of stuff, characters, the storylines, and everything else in between. Game of Thrones, the show that brought fantasy back to the mainstream, the show that helped give Starbucks one of their best advertising boosts in the last 2 decades. That show is going to be argued here, and I have two esteemed colleagues here that are Game of Thrones monster fans, and they have some strong thoughts, if you saw the practice round, that aren't always positive about the show that they dearly love so much. Introducing first, you can see her just over to my right, to your right, maybe your left. That is the one, the only producer and talent at iHeartRadio, and you've seen her writing everything from Vogue to The Hollywood Reporter. Joelle Monique, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm really good. When you guys came to me with Game of Thrones, I was like, finally, like something fun to do in this quarantine. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, last week we were debating Lost, and like Lost has, a controversial final season and all that stuff, but I feel like Lost as a show was just a warm up to how we were all going to react to Game of Thrones. And your opponent today, Joelle, he is a man that I have had the pleasure of announcing a number of his matches. Usually he's in the winning team for the movie Trivia Schmoedown, a former champion in that league. And he just launched Nerds in Suits, which is a nice kind of conglomeration of all of his new shows. He is Ben the Boss Bateman. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Mark. I'm so flattered that you know what I'm doing. You're paying attention. That's incredible. I noticed that with the people that are voting for me, they give a heart. Joelle, you just get a thumbs up. So I think deck is stacked. But I'm excited today.
This is a safe way to do quarantine. Okay, this is social distancing likes.
That's right. Yeah, I think everybody's being a little standoffish in this day and age, and maybe a like is all you need. Because look, I love both of y'all. The internet's going to tell one of you that they like you, but they don't love you, and the other one they're going to reward with being the winner of today's match. That's right, folks. You determine who wins the binge battle here in the world of Game of Thrones. So the way that you do that is Joelle and Ben are both going to present arguments in a variety of rounds. 4 rounds in total, unless we go to sudden death overtime. We do have a 5th round ready in that event. You're going to click like, that blue thumbs up button, if you think Joelle had the better, more compelling argument, or you liked her answer better, or you just feel like hitting the like button. Conversely, if you think Ben Bateman had the better choice, had the better argument throughout the round, then you click that heart button. I'd also love to see y'all's comments, and I will be reading some of them throughout the duration of the show because, as the Game of Thrones creators know, the fans are very opinionated about this, and let's let those opinions flow in a nice, calm setting like Facebook. So without further ado, we're about to get into the first round of Binge Battle, but I do want to remind everybody out there that at any time, you can hit up RottenTomatoes.com. They certainly have a lot of Game of Thrones info on there, but you can also check out Binge Central. You just click on that, and that's kind of our hub for all things that are streaming right now, and that's the way we digest our entertainment, especially in this pandemic. So enjoy all the latest movies stuff, all the new TV shows, and a lot of cool lists that you can check out. Okay, enough preamble. Let's get into this. Let's get it on. Our round number 1 topic is, who's the best character in Game of Thrones history? Well, if you thought we were throwing a softball with the practice round, this one's going to get tough, and this one is going to get controversial. So, Ben Bateman, you lost the practice round, but that also is going to give you the kickoff that you just received to do round number 1 first. You got about a minute on the clock. Hit me with your favorite character.
The best character in Game of Thrones is obviously Arya Stark. It would be hard not to pick one of the Stark sisters. I think there's a few other great characters, but at the end of the day, when you think about the best episodes of Game of Thrones, the best arcs, even the best spin-off opportunities, they all seem to come back to Arya. She's the only character from the beginning of the show that clearly rejects the system. She rejects the politics. She rejects the Game of Thrones, and she goes and plays her own game. She goes and learns from many, many sort of father figures, from mother figures throughout the show. She trains with people. She learns different skill sets. Always inquisitive, always fierce, and at the end of the day, vicious. Just somebody who really, when you watch her on the road with the Hound, and she's instructing the Hound, don't kill that guy. We should have sympathy. Later on, laughing maniacally when she hears the death of another family member. She's just somebody who's so affected by the environment she's in. She becomes the most deep, the most ruthless, and really the most cunning character who really rejects the system but shines because of it. And I think it makes her unique and ultimately the best character in Game of Thrones.
This is so much fun because as soon as we postulated best character, the chat room lit up with like 900 different answers. So it's going to be a fun debate here today, Joelle. I think I might take Arya Stark and the Hound in a buddy cop movie together. But as far as best standalone character, who's your pick?
So it's going to be a battle between the Stark sisters today because my pick is Sansa Stark. Here's
Obviously.
why. You want to say vicious? Sansa Stark doesn't start off vicious, but by the end, she mauls her like a tormentor to death with dogs, daggers. She takes a kingdom essentially from her brother. No like people left in her wake. She's on a mission. And what I really like about Sansa is that if we look at the world of fantasy, early fantasy had only like naive princesses waiting to be saved. Later fantasy, you get a ton of like badass hard ladies doing it for themselves, which is awesome. But Sansa gives us a great combination of both, and therefore becomes one of the most real characters. You have this young girl who wants to like fall in love and wants to be a queen and wants to do all of the things that are sort of pimped to little girls as the ultimate life fantasy. And then she's thrown to the wolves and learns what reality is like. We explore the way women have to deal with being sexualized at early ages, how they manage to negotiate the way they are seen, and we see her blossom after she gets with Littlefinger and she figures out how to manipulate him. She's manipulating governments, and she goes back and essentially wins a war for the North, takes over, and becomes an epic, excellent leader. She doesn't just reject the Game of Thrones, she wins it. She is the breaker of wheels. She is our queen. Love Sansa, best character in Game of Thrones.
Okay, so it is a battle of the sisters. And Ben, I want to go back to you for a quick counterpoint here. Joelle's really arguing that Sansa has the more interesting character arc. Do you think that Arya's got a better arc than her sister?
I do. I think that Arya's arc is more interesting because it's less predictable. You have to sort of have a character in the Sansa role in the story of Game of Thrones. Otherwise, the show wouldn't be compelling on the way to the throne. I think Sansa is an incredible character, and I think Sansa would be a great answer if you asked me several other questions, some of which I don't want to give Joelle fuel here with. But I do think that Arya, because in the final season or two, actually does get to politic. She gets to be a part of the politics at the end as the sisters are attempted to be played against each other by Littlefinger. She has a significant part in playing her role to get Littlefinger ultimately executed. Not to mention the fact that she takes out the friggin' Night King, a big throwback to Eowyn in Lord of the Rings. I mean, she is the killer of the, like, come on. You can't beat Arya. She's the best character.
Okay, a pretty convincing argument there by Ben. Joelle, your counterpoint to Ben's argument.
While Arya has a very incredible arc, she's not any more unique than any other pirate adventurer from any other fantasy. She slashes her way to victory and she finds out she has a heart, but she's just still like, it belongs to the sea and goes back out there. This is a story we've seen time and time again. Typically, I think with Sansa's storyline, what you see are women either falling in love into like a healthy relationship or they're dead. So I don't think there's anything predictable about what happened with Sansa. I think most people thought she was going to be this evil terror and she turns into something completely different. I think she's unique and gorgeous and, again, a true queen of the North. Amazing.
All right. It sounded like you were describing me there until you went with the Queen of the North. The unique and gorgeous are two traits that I like to claim. So one more time, I'm going to remind everybody, if you think Joelle had the better argument, hit that like button, hit that blue thumbs up. If you think Ben is going to win round number one, or that's who you'd like to see, hit that heart, hit the red button. So we go to final arguments now. Ben, I'm going to give you about 10, 15 seconds as a summary for Arya Stark.
Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think your point just a minute ago about Sansa being gorgeous is exactly the reason that I think Arya is such an interesting character. She's not presented as the beautiful, elegant princess. She's a tomboy from the early age of the show, goes on to become the most fearsome character, and then stands by her sister's side at the end of the show. The way she's presented doesn't fit consistently with really any of the ways that those princess characters in major shows tend to fit, and I like her more for that reason. It's close. Love Sansa. Arya's a little better.
All right. Well, the Rotten Tomatoes official Facebook page just commented that Mark Ellis is the Queen of the North. So thanks for that new online nickname. Joelle, you are defending the real Queen of the North. 15 seconds is all yours to close out round number one.
Sansa surviving Ramsay Bolton stepping into her own light, becoming a ruler, defying her brother. Her beauty is second nature to all of the things that she accomplishes in such a short time. She learns from everyone she interacts with so that she can become a good ruler, not run off and go do her own thing. She stays with her family and keeps Ned Stark's legacy alive. And really, if he's the character we're introduced to, he's the first character that dies, that sort of shocks us. I think it's what makes her incredible for her to continue on his legacy, her mother's legacy. It's got to be Sansa Stark.
Okay, so the chat room is lit up, and predictably so. I'm seeing a lot of great comments here, and a lot of great support for both arguments from Joelle and Ben. My favorite comment is probably from Donna Hoffer, who says Sansa is the best character, but Tyrion is the most beloved by audiences, with Arya being a close second. Unrelated, Donna says she will die salty about what they did to Daenerys. So maybe that's featuring Daenerys' chances of entering this argument. But after all of that hubbub, and it was a great opening round by both competitors, Ben Bateman has gotten more votes than Joelle. So Ben goes up 1-0 in Binge Battle Game of Thrones edition. And we move on to your next category. So
do I get an acceptance speech here, Mark, or no acceptance speech?
It's very early in the game. One round.
Early. And if Game of Thrones fans know anything, it's this: whoever's leading early, maybe that doesn't bode well for your chances later on in the game. But we are going to go to the most shocking death. Okay, I mean, this show is littered with them. You may have more shocking deaths, Joelle, than characters to pick from for round number one. So it's a new round. You're clicking like for Joelle. You're clicking love for Ben. Joelle, you're going to kick this round off with your most shocking death. What do you got for me?
Okay, Talia Stark. Now, why did I choose a character some of you wouldn't remember the name for? Talia Stark, if you don't remember, was the pregnant future queen of the North who dies at the Red Wedding. We've seen so many deaths up to Talia's, but what makes hers particularly disturbing is the way in which she's killed. We have never, ever seen a person killed like this. Auntie stabbed in the belly while pregnant. Devastating. If we look at the arc of that storyline, just the deaths within that scene, it's like, oh, it's soldiers killing soldiers. Oh no, Brad has been hit. What do we do? And then it's her, and you understand the shattering of innocence. You understand that the legacy, the very last hope of the Stark family at this point, bolsters and brace. Arya's right outside the gates. She's almost there. And now there's no hope left for us. Like, we have to go all the way back and start from zero. And her death is the pinnacle of that scene. It's incredible. It's a devastating loss. I'm still not over it, clearly.
It's an emotional thing, and we're still recovering collectively as a people from the events of the Red Wedding. So Talia Stark, I'll be honest, the name didn't hit me initially, but as soon as you said Red Wedding, I did the math, and I was like, oh, right, that was like the worst death of all of the ones that took place that evening. Ben Bateman, you're going against Joelle. What is your most shocking death in Game of Thrones lore?
You know, the death you mentioned, Joelle, may be shocking, but certainly not memorable. I believe the character's proper name is Talisa. It's with an S, and that should be proof of just how irrelevant of a character that truly was to kill. Now, the real shocking part is the fact that the unborn child, young Eddard Stark, that they wanted to run around with, that's the real shocking death. My shocking death, of course, is going to be the single most shocking death in the history of television, Ned Stark. It is a moment in TV history when we all collectively gasped, wondered what was going to be the reveal that could show us somehow this didn't actually happen. But it did. It actually happened. They killed the main character of the show on HBO's hottest new show. I couldn't believe it. My jaw was on the floor. I think as most people's were. And it started to actually change the paradigm of television going forward with what we could do, the expectation of a premium show. Not to mention the fact that Boromir, who had died in Lord of the Rings, was resurrected as Ned Stark. He's the best character in the trilogy. He comes back in this show. I'm so excited to watch him. And they take him out. My mind was blown. Boromir, dead twice. Sean Bean's the man. It's the most shocking death of all time in the history of television.
Yeah, I do remember watching that episode. In our pre-show, I mentioned that was the first episode I actually watched of Game of Thrones. And I just remember thinking, like, okay, how's old Bean going to get out of this one? It didn't happen like that. And that maybe set us up for more shocking deaths. But were they more shocking, or were they just other shocking deaths? So, Joelle, how do you counter Ben's argument where he claimed that the death of Ned Stark is maybe the most compelling, dramatic, shocking moment in TV history?
I will absolutely agree that Ned Stark's death is the first shocking death in Game of Thrones. It certainly sets the tone for the rest. I think the ability to shock us after that is what makes Talus's death so like like horrifying and heartbreaking. The idea that like she's insignificant is ridiculous. At the time, she's a love interest. She's set to be queen. She's abandoned her family. Does she stack up in the entire Game of Thrones? No, but neither does the Mountain, and who does he kill? The Viper. The Viper in Long Season's in there for a season and a half, but his death is still horrifyingly shocking. I think when we are still able to be shocked after Ned's death, after we know that anyone's game, that to me sets a very high bar. And again, you know, just the fact that we saw it at the Red Wedding, that it's the pinnacle of those deaths, I think arguably more shocking than Ned's death.
It's a pretty interesting way that Joelle frames it, Ben, is that it's harder to shock people in the later seasons than it would be in the first season.
Yeah, I will stick to my claim here that I think though the scene is shocking and horrible. I mean, very terrifying scene, Joel. I'll agree with you. I do really believe it's not Talus's death that's so shocking. I actually think it's the death of the unborn child that is the more shocking of the two deaths. Maybe it's a technicality, but you could have chosen the unborn child of Eddard Stark. I really do truly honestly believe that when looking back on the show, the Red Wedding will be remembered as an important episode and a scene, but the death of Ned Stark will be remembered as a more important death and definitely a more shocking one in the history of television.
Proving my Game of Thrones knowledge, that episode is called The Reigns of Castamere, that Red Wedding. I knew that because I had to do the research for the trivia question, which somebody won a Fandango Now promo code courtesy of. So, setting the table once again, click those like buttons, click the blue thumbs up if you think Joelle has the better argument. Click the red heart for Ben if you think he should win round number 2. We're going to go to the final arguments. Joelle, you got about 10 seconds for one last dance with Talisa, whatever her name is.
Ned Stark was a prisoner of two of the most evil characters on Game of Thrones. Like, was his death shocking at the time? Sure, no one expected it. But I don't even think after Ned's death we get that silent treatment that we get after the Red Wedding. And I still think that if there's no amount of separating Talisa from her unborn child. At this point, they are one person. So if Eddard Stark is a more shocking death than Ned, then Talisa also has to fall into that category.
Okay, Ben Bateman, you're closing out round number 2. The likes and the hearts are flying fast and furious. What's your final argument?
I've made all my points against the Talisa death. The biggest point for the Ned Stark death being as shocking as it is that his insistence to play by the rules, to be this nobleman, when he dies, it proves to you that's not how this show is going to work. You're going to have to politic, and you're going to have to politic hard if you don't want to die. And that's what the next 7 seasons of the show is going to be about. It set the tone for the greatest television show in modern history.
All right. Well, like I said, it's going to happen in all the arguments here today. Chat room agreeing with both of y'all at times, but also they have their own opinion, like Brandon Cole, who says, I can't believe no one mentioned the Viper. Well, we did mention the Viper, but nobody took the Viper's death. Jen's Wax says Oberyn for sure would be her answer for the most shocking death. And it really does come down to a question of, well, what is more shocking? Is it something that happens when we're getting to know a show? Or is it something that still shocks us after we already know that that show can set us up for twists and turns? It appears that Facebook is siding with Joelle Monique in round number 2 by the slightest of margins.
That's outrageous. That's ridiculous.
That is outrageous. Thank you, guys. Wow.
Outrageous though it may be, I wouldn't consider Ben losing in round 2 to be quite as shocking as either Ned or Talisa, but it was a good argument presented all the way around. And it's really easy for me because we get to keep the drama going 1-1 as we head into round number 3. Round number 3 is known as the best battle round. Okay, so Game of Thrones gives us these huge, sprawling, epic army versus army versus army versus army battles. Then we also have these really cool interpersonal moments that feel like a huge boxing match. So, Ben, I'm going to go back to you to start this argument. Best battle in Game of Thrones.
So I thought long and hard about this one, Mark, and what I ultimately came up with was that I think the impact of a single death in a fight is more impactful than any of the major battles in the show, which is why I picked ultimately the fight between the Viper over in Martell and the Mountain. It is the most compelling fight in the entire show and has far and away the most horrifying ending to a battle in the show's history. On rewatch, my heart started beating. I almost vomited. It's that upsetting to watch the ending. Not to mention the fact that the mountain played by a guy whose name is pretty much unpronounceable by me. It's like Bjorn Jorgen Vorgensen. He's the world's strongest man. He's won that competition like 3 times. He lifts boulders the size of me, and you watch him crush someone's head in the show. I mean, that's frightening. That's terrifying. It's compelling. And the fight itself is incredible. The stages, he's so much bigger. That is a better fight and a better battle than anything else that ever happens in the show, and ultimately more memorable than any of the other battles.
I love this round because it's reminding me, my favorite part of Game of Thrones, Joelle, is like the buildup is great and all the drama and the interpersonal relationships and the conniving, the backstabbing. But once we get to these epic battle scenes or these interpersonal ones, like what Ben just said, so that's a great pull from Ben. How do you counter that? What is your best battle in Game of Thrones?
If this were best fight, I would not have an argument, for Ben would have chosen absolutely the best fight in Game of Thrones. But we're talking battles, and battles are huge, and they are against armies. And the Battle of the Bastards is by far and away the best battle in Game of Thrones history. It rivals cinematic battles like Helm's Deep, Saving Private Ryan's long battle. We're talking claustrophobia-inducing battles, tight shots. I think they spend 2 months filming this. It is so intense. Some of the best music that Rami Djawadi, I'm so sorry I'm saying his name wrong, Djawadi writes. He writes Bastards in this, those big, thick, heavy drums as Jon is like trudging up to get Ramsay. It shows how Sansa is a great ruler of the North, how she's prepared to battle. The fact that Jon is super strong, but also on last legs, the way we see them just slinging in the mud and the snow. Everything about Battle of the Bastards is big and epic and impactful. And if you don't leave remembering how you felt after that, like you needed a very long cold shower and a lot of water and a big breath, like there's not a lot of film scenes that touch you like that. And to do it in a fight, to tell a story through battle, incredibly challenging. And they do it, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think like all great, like epic army on army battle scenes, you get this huge shot, this perspective of everybody, but you also get that cool shot of Jon Snow, which is basically him versus everyone else. So it both great pulls. Ben, I'm going to go back to you. If you're watching right now and you want to get in on the conversation, if you think Ben has the better argument, vote with your heart. If you think Joelle, vote with your thumbs up. Like for Joelle, love for Ben. So Ben, 30 seconds. Tell me why this interpersonal battle means more than the Battle of the Bastards.
Ultimately, the Battle of the Bastards is cinematic. It's fantastic, but it happens for stupid reasons. I mean, Rickon can't run zigzags, which is why Jon runs out into the field. It's kind of a stupid decision by Jon in the first place. He doesn't listen to Sansa, so it's really just a plot device so that Sansa can come save him. I mean, it's kind of just a bad decision by resurrected Jon. Whereas all of the stakes that are set up by the Viper versus the Mountain Fight are great. I mean, Tyrion has another champion fighting for him after we've already seen it happen once successfully. And the Mountain, who is the show's biggest character, the actual biggest character, gets to exhibit truly that he's the world's strongest man and the strongest person in all of Westeros that's not a giant. I just think it's a much more memorable single moment in the show that doesn't lean on the theatrics and the theatricality of a huge battle, which looks great, but is way less memorable.
Yeah, the Mountain actually did play professional basketball in Europe for a time. So, Joelle, we go back to you for your counterpoint. It's a big sweeping battle, but do you agree with Ben that the decision-making was so questionable, it cost some of the dramatic value of the battle?
Now, how many wars have been fought over stupid things? We fight wars over dumb stuff all of the time. What I love about it cinematically and thematically is the fact that you have 2 guys trying so hard to be accepted in their roles as leaders, and to see them have been shunned by their fathers in different ways for different reasons, to see their struggles to fit into their family and honor their sigils finally come to a head over a land that to us as the viewers, the first space we've been introduced to, is so vital and important. And I really love the idea of like David Benioff and D.B. Weiss having culminated like the horrors of what humans can do to each other and the importance of land and family. I mean, honestly, Battle of the Bastards was our penultimate final and we had ended here. It would have been so much better because it would have connected to all of the main themes that it was clear they cared about and that drove the story. We see all of that in Battle of the Bastards, and that's what makes it so impressive.
This is good stuff we got going. So many great comments in the chat room. I want to highlight before we get to the final arguments. Rachel Spalding's joining us, says, just started watching the entire series on season 2 right now. Well, keep watching it because it's a great show. And Rachel says, can we have a prequel series? I think we actually might have something in the works for you, Rachel. So that's a little sidebar. Once again, vote with your heart, with your red button for Ben. Vote with the blue button with your thumbs up like for Joelle. Ben, you got about 10, 15 seconds to tell me why Mountain Viper is the best.
I think what's the difference between a battle and a fight? You can semantic me all day long if you want to tell me that a battle means something different than a fight. But I know that the confrontation between the two characters I'm talking about is more impactful as a fight, not as a setting. The battle setting, the battle of the bastards, is something people talk about in the same way that the Red Wedding is what that scene's about, not the actual death of Talisa. The fight between the two characters that I'm talking about is more important ultimately and memorable than the actual large-scale set piece you're talking about.
Okay, so Joelle, the final word goes to you. You mentioned that you would love to have the Battle of the Bastards be the last thing we saw in Game of Thrones. Well, you get to have the last word defending said battle, so have at it.
Jon Snow has fought up until this time to be a leader and be seen and be respected, and it's been hard. He's been stabbed. It's been ugly. Here's where he proves himself, and he proves himself not just to himself, not just to his family, but to his men, which I think is the most vital thing to Jon Snow. And as the person that we're relying on to complete the mission of Ned Stark, that guy we lost in season 1, this is his moment. And so it's grand and it's epic and it's fitting and it works. And I think it drives the story home, and it takes out 2 of our biggest baddies in the entire series. This is the battle that ends Littlefinger, and it's the battle that ends Ramsay.
Ryan Chandler says that his favorite battle was the one that you couldn't see without adjusting your television. So nice little inside nod there. Don't worry, Rachel, you'll get to that episode. Eileen Rivera says the Battle of the Bastards was her favorite. Gerardo has a great point. He says he goes with Joelle that the scene where Jon is trapped underneath the crowd of soldiers and Giant getting killed with all those arrows is just epic. So it appears that the epic battle won this time, that Joelle now goes up 2-1 on Ben. Battle of the Bastards edging out Mountain versus Viper. Look, I'd consider both of them epic battles, and I don't think that the semantic between a battle and a fight costs either competitor anything in this round. I think that both are all-time great in the pantheon of Game of Thrones, but the Battle of the Bastards, the crowd went epic, and Joelle now enjoys a 2-1 lead. But Ben, don't worry, you can come back in this round if you can tell me who ultimately, in round number 4, is our question, should have sat on the Iron Throne. So many contenders. It was like a reality show. You have so many different people waiting to get that one crown. So Ben, who should that crown ultimately have belonged to?
You see, what's great about this argument, Mark, is that basically Joelle made this argument for me 2 rounds ago when she talked about how great of a character Sansa was. Every argument she made for Sansa in that round is pretty much what qualifies her to be the person that should have sat on the Iron Throne. It's often been said that a ruler that doesn't want to rule is the best kind, and because she only ever really wanted to rule in the North, it makes her overqualified. In the final scene, in the final season, when she's talking to her uncle and he's like, "Let me tell you about my qualifications," and she's like, "Uncle, sit down." She just like has the venom. She sees people for who they are. She gets right in the face of Daenerys the first time she meets her. And if you go all the way back to the first season when she's meeting Joffrey, it's so tragic to look at the way she looks at Joffrey, those innocent eyes. She trains under all these different great characters in the show. She becomes a victim. She becomes a hero. She becomes a ruler. She becomes a warrior. And she learns from the best, which is what makes her ultimately qualified to truly sit on the throne after having played the game. Nobody else in the show that lives at the end has played the game successfully and maintained their sense of good that would make them the qualified person to sit on that throne. She's a true queen and deserves to be the ruler at the end of the show.
Okay, so Ben Bateman leaning heavily into the Sansa should be on the Iron Throne debate. Joelle, are you going to go full Freaky Friday on me and take Arya and then just basically switch your picks from round 1?
That would be wild, but no, I'm going to go with Tyrion Lannister should have sat on the throne. Listen, Sansa Stark is the true queen of the North, and she deserves to rule there. She's an excellent queen, but you can't take a queen of the North who's loyal to the North, who will make very questionable decisions for the people of the North, as we saw her do with Jon, when Jon was like, listen, we got to let these kids keep their home. And she's like, no, screw them. Their dad was a traitor, so therefore they're traitors, so therefore we're giving that house to somebody who was loyal to us. She will always pick the North over everybody else. You cannot rule from the center of the kingdom with one one nation state in mind. It's going to cause chaos. You're going to get killed, girl. It's not good. On the other hand, Tyrion has been hand to not one, but two monarchs. He has gone through so many failings. We have seen the darkest part of him, and he's come out of that a better person, a smarter person, a person ready and willing to rule. He has spent time all over Westeros, so he's familiar with all the countries, their customs, their leaders, and we know that he understands the art of politicking so extremely well that and we've seen him rule as a shadow king essentially and do great things for the kingdom. He won the battle that they had in season 2. He's just clearly the superior thinker and tactician. And I think those are the two things that you really want as your leader of Westeros.
All right. Once again, we have Tyrion versus Sansa, and the chat room is already not agreeing with either Joelle or Ben. I have some love for Gendry. I have some love for Bran. Big fan Ewan says Daenerys should be on the Iron Throne, and Joel Mears says me. Joel thinks he should be on the Iron Throne. So maybe that's for season 7 or 8, Joel. In the meantime, Ben, going to go back to you for a little more Sansa. What's your rebuttal to Joelle's argument for Tyrion?
Great pick, Joelle. I mean, Tyrion is probably the most beloved character in the entire show. However, not a good king, not a good ruler. First and foremost, he's drunk all the time, and he philanders and spends most of his time in brothels. I mean, great TV character, not a great king. Not somebody that I would want to be my king. I'd be terrified if that guy was my king. What, he's trying to make battle decisions when he's hammered? That's not a good thing. All right. On top of which, you got to look at the way the people are going to react to their ruler. And in Westeros, where the people have proven that they do not respect him, just because of his size, which is not fair, they won't follow him. They'd revolt. He's a tremendous hand of the king and an incredible thinker, but not somebody who fits the bill in Westeros to be the king, which is why I actually think she should have sat on the throne, because I think she could keep it. I don't think he'd be able to keep the throne. I think he'd lose it.
Okay, so Joelle, Ben basically saying that while Tyrion's behavior maybe does sum up some politicians' behavior, maybe not fitting for a king of a TV show, give me why Tyrion would be a better ruler than Sansa.
Well, Ben, I would agree with you if we were talking about the Tyrion of seasons 1 through 5. The guy who was tormented by his father, abused by his sister, neglected by everyone, was an alcoholic. That's not a good ruler. Somebody who grows and comes out of that, develops, learns to lead nations, has had terrible experiences and reinforces themselves as a power of good. That's exactly who I want leading my nation. I think all of the bad things that Tyrion had to go through make him the perfect monarch. And to your, comment about how people might react to him, we can look to our actual history, which we know Game of Thrones is based in a lot of history. Richard III, had some deformity. I think his leg, and he had humpback. Still a leader, not a great leader, but still led and changed some minds. I think when we put people who we don't expect in positions of power, we often get a change in society. So maybe Westeros would be better after King Tyrion led them.
All right, I have a feeling either way, however this debate goes, you're going to see a lot of hashtags, not my king. Vote with your thumbs up, vote with your blue button for Joelle if you think she is the better argument. With Ben, the red heart is the button you want to click and show your support. Ben Bateman, going to go to you for your final argument. Give me about 10, 15 seconds stumping for Sansa.
The first character we meet in Game of Thrones is Ned Stark, a true nobleman, a man whose children should be the ones sitting on the throne. And at the end of the day, the Lannisters, they're tricksters. They're people that trick their way into the positions they're in. They politic the way into the positions they're in, and they're not honest. They shouldn't be where they are in the first place. The Starks are noble. Sansa's a Stark. She's the better ruler than Tyrion. Even though Tyrion, I honestly think, is a better character. I like Tyrion more, but Sansa deserved to sit on the throne.
Okay, Joelle, final word goes to you for your boy Tyrion.
Tyrion has the best interest of everybody else at heart. He's rarely selfish or self-centered. He's older, wiser, and has a chance to back Aki. And when people get to know him and he gets a chance to prove himself, almost inevitably they love him. Sansa is an amazing ruler for the North. The people love her and she loves her people, but she cannot rule all of Westeros with a North way of thinking. It's going to fail.
Okay, so let me get y'all's take on this real quick that somebody postulated, that the Night King should have been the fitting ruler at the end of the show. Can each of y'all just start with you, Ben, then go to Joelle? Not for points. I'm just curious. Give me about 10 seconds. Should the Night King, does that make sense?
I mean, look, he can resurrect the dead, so nobody ever dies. Inevitability is king. He's a king. He can. He's got a sweet dragon, the ice dragon. It's one of the coolest looking images in the whole show. It's like having a great car, right? No, I don't think he'd be a good king.
Joelle, how about the Night King?
A good king, no, a king that would have made sense for the ending of this season. Absolutely. We've seen time and time again that brutality wins in the Game of Thrones, and there was no one more brutal than the Night King. Also, I think when you can just touch people and now they have to follow you, it doesn't seem like the walking zombies have a choice. It makes sense that he would be, a firm leader. Good, no, great, probably.
Okay, you voted with your hearts, you voted with your heads. Before we get to the results, Lucy Fitzgerald has my favorite comment in this round saying, I wanted that bald guy to rule that got killed by the dragon. So
Serious?
I love that, Lucy, because that's a loose enough description to where Rachel didn't have anything spoiled for because she's only on season 2. That being said, the votes are in, and this is as close as they come, folks, but by the narrowest of margins. We have ourselves a tie, and we are going to sudden death. Ben Bateman and his Sansa Starklove is going up and tying Joelle at 2-2. And once again, here on Binge Battle, we have a sudden death category. So if I prepare for this outcome, it's going to be okay. You're voting the same way you did in regulation, except the argument's going to be a little quicker. So Ben, Joelle, I'm going to give you the round and what the topic is. Then you each get an opening minute like normal, and then you only have your closing arguments as the last straw in it. So if you're prepared and ready, I know it's been exhausting. Anybody need to breathe? Anybody need to take a sip of water? Y'all ready to go to get in this?
Good to go, man.
Nope. Excellent, ready.
I love having you on the show. Round at number 5, sudden death. It's going to be started by Joelle, and it is the subject of the worst character. Oh, we're going negative with a Game of Thrones topic. Okay, Joelle, the minute is yours. Who's the worst character in Game of Thrones?
I went worse as an evil, and my pick is Littlefinger. Listen, this is a guy who would sell out his mother if it meant that he could get some coin and a little bit of advantage. He picked the love of his life's daughter to essentially groom into his lover/queen, then sold her to a rapist who flays his victims alive and then pranced back in like it was all simpatico. He was like, no, it's totally fine. He's got no concept of what it means to be a good person, a good friend, a good parental figure, a good leader, a good advisor, and he plays all of those roles. He is monstrous in all of his actions, and he never feels bad about them, ever. He has no remorse or soul to speak of. Littlefinger is by far and away one of the best players in Game of Thrones, but he's absolutely one of the worst people.
Okay, so Ben, you agree with that argument. I have a feeling you don't. Who is the worst character in Game of Thrones?
I'm going to pick the rapist you mentioned who fillets his victims, Ramsay Bolton. He is a horrible character. Both he is evil, but he's also badly developed. I think he actually fits both bills. He's the most cartoonishly evil character in the show. He feels like they killed Joffrey and they needed somebody to just be kind of bad and evil at all times. So they just gave us Ramsay. He's just not very interesting. Any of the backstory scenes we get with Ramsay, we're supposed to develop why he is the way they are. Nobody remembers those. They just remember him laughing and like torturing people. That's like basically all Ramsay's good for. So at the end of the day, when I look back on Game of Thrones, I barely even remember Littlefinger as evil. He seems just kind of like another awesome piece of the chessboard. He is evil, sure, but he's a great piece. He's no more evil to me than Cersei's evil, or most of the characters are evil. Whereas Ramsay just sucks and is badly developed and is evil and is cartoonishly bad.
That feels like a bumper sticker. Ramsay just sucks. Ramsay Bolton, certainly I wouldn't really want to hang out with either one of these two fellas at a party. I wouldn't trust either one of them as far as I can throw them. But now we've almost come to that time. So remember, you're voting with your blue thumbs up like button for Joelle. If you want her to win not only the round, but also the match here on Binge Battle, you're voting for Ben Bateman by clicking that heart, the red button. And Joelle, the time has come for your final argument. Tell me once again your best reason why Littlefinger is the worst character in Game of Thrones.
Ramsay's evil is orchestrated in such a way to show us the worst possible person from an evil perspective. And then we get the backstory of him. I don't know what Ben's talking about. I learned a lot about Ramsay's backstory as he was torturing Reek. And it all fled because we've seen his father. He's formed himself into the ideals of his community. It says how we treat boys, what we teach them about the ways they're expected to react is how they're going to absorb those things and behave in the world. I think Ramsay has a very important role to play. Do I think he's more evil than Littlefinger? No, Littlefinger's evil is not to serve a higher good or a purpose of action or family or kingdom. It is simply to serve himself. And none of Ramsay's worst actions can be carried out unless Littlefinger orchestrates them. He's the guy behind the scenes pulling all the strings. And while Ramsay, the things he does looks awful, probably feel awful, with Littlefinger, there's no warning. There's no way you can see him coming unless you've already been hurt by him. That is some next level evil stuff. Like, you can see Ramsay coming a mile away, dark hair, flaying people, talks mean. There's no way to avoid the kind of evil that Littlefinger is, and that makes him truly devious.
Okay, Ben, going to give you about 45 seconds to a minute as well to close up shop here and give us your final argument for Ramsay.
When I think about the scenes that Littlefinger is in the show Game of Thrones, they're mostly pretty delightful. I would never want the character to not be in the show. He's great to watch. He's really more of a love to hate type of character because every time he does something dastardly, you look at him and you think, man, this show is just made so much better by this evil character. Sure, he's orchestrating horrible things, but it feels like the ecosystem that is Game of Thrones needs players like that. When I think of Ramsay, I just want him to die. Every time I think about the character, I'm like, I can't wait for this guy to die because he sucks. The scenes that he's in aren't very good. They're really brutal. They're even like they're setting back Sansa as a character. They literally put her in scenes with him, and it's like, oh man, everything that was great about this character that was developing so nicely is ruined by this idiot Ramsay. So all I want to see it the whole time is just to watch him die. I want him to be off the show, and I want him replaced by somebody who has a little bit more depth and is a little bit more interesting. Your character you chose is truly more interestingly evil than my character, but my character is both evil and bad. Like, it's just a bad character on the show. I keep coming back to it because when I think about it, I would never want to rewatch the Ramsay episodes, but I love the Littlefinger stuff. It feels like an essential piece of Game of Thrones and one that I wouldn't be able to live without. So ultimately, I got to say, Ramsay is a worse character on all fronts.
I will say it was a Ramsay Bolton episode of Game of Thrones that got me the closest to throwing up my dinner watching what was going on screen, but I managed to keep it in the tummy. And I think that Ben and Joelle can at least agree on the fact that Ramsay or Littlefinger, if you find one of them hitchhiking, do not pick them up. Just keep driving down the road as fast as you can. But unfortunately, the way things work here on Binge Battle, we can't give it to both parties. Only one can wear the crown on the Iron Throne. And we do have a winner. You voted with your legs for Joelle. You voted with your hearts for Ben. And maybe it was that last Action Army push that put Ben Bateman over the top by Ben Bateman is our winner. Congratulations, Ben Bateman. You're in the winner's circle.
Feels good, Mark. It feels really good. I'd like to thank a few people here. If you give me a second here, I'd like to thank no, I'm just kidding. Joelle, this was so much fun playing against you.
This was really lovely.
It's a good throwback to our old Schmoedown days. It was nice to go up against you 3 years later, but that was really a lot of fun. So thanks everybody for watching.
Definitely. I remember now what a great battler you are. I was really excited to get into this with you. You definitely did not disappoint. You brought it all. I would have definitely voted with you on a couple of rounds. Amazing.
Y'all had great arguments, and it was so much fun watching the chat room keep up with y'all because, look, the chat room, they have to vote for one of y'all, but that doesn't mean they have to agree with either pick. And so they gave us a lot of other options. And I think that maybe 20 years from now, there will be a 10-part documentary on this episode of Binge Battle because it had just that many twists and turns and drama. So first and foremost, I do want to thank all of the fans for showing up in force and watching us here today. And I want to remind y'all, check out RottenTomatoes.com. That's where you can go to Binge Central. It's such a great guide for all things streaming right now. There's so many cool lists. They did a list of like the 100 best comedies of all time. They threw in a sports movies one that I loved, and as well as a lot of TV streaming information too. So it's just your hub for all things binging right now. RottenTomatoes.com at Binge Central. Thanks to our partners at Fandango Now for giving away those promo codes for all the trivia questions. And of course, thank you to both Ben and Joelle. Ben, you are a winner here today. And once again, congrats on the new endeavor with Nerds in Suits. I don't know that I could call this show a great conversation. It was a great debate, but you have a new show called A Great Conversation that maybe is a little more congenial than what we had today.
I do, man. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, Nerds in Suits is a dream of mine for a long time to launch it. It's up now. You can find it on youtube.com/nerdsinsuits. And more so, really, thank you to everybody that was in the chat from Action Army, from Action Industries, the brand idea with Andrew Guy. I saw a lot of familiar names in there that made me really happy to see that. So thanks for shouting that out. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys.
And Ben, I can't let you go without a couple maybe streaming recommendations that you have for all the folks watching us at home. We've seen Game of Thrones for the most part. So what else is on your dial that's a must watch?
Really enjoyed the Prime show Goliath. That show's I'm a big fan of that one. I've got a friend in that show. Billy Bob is fantastic in that show. It feels like that classic like 90s that 90s like courtroom stuff. It's really fun to watch. I enjoy that one a lot. I've just gone back now and rewatched all of Better Call Saul as well because I absolutely freaking love that show. As a big Breaking Bad fan, I think Better Call Saul is terrific.
I am currently engrossed in, I think, season 4 of Better Call Saul. So I'm very excited to see how that all plays out. And I've caught a little bit of Goliath and really liked what I saw. So, Joelle, first of all, I know that everybody can find you all over the place with your writing, your podcasting endeavors, your hosting stuff. I also want to give a shout out to the show that you produce, Nerdificent, which you certainly adjudicated yourself as a producer of a show called Nerdificent very well here today. Where else can all the kids out there find you?
Yeah, come check out Fake Doctor's Real Friends if you're into a binge. Watch Scrubs with me and Zach and Donald. It's been a lot of fun producing that show as well. Definitely check out Nerdificent with Danny and Iffy. We're doing a mental health May month, which has been a really exciting and fun to learn about the science behind a lot of mental health procedures. But if you need an escape, if you're looking for a Game of Thrones vibe, The Last Kingdom is going to hit you real good. It's like a BBC production. It's a whole bunch of actors you've never seen, which for me is always very exciting because I like to see like new faces and really get immersed in the content. It is about the first king of England and also about like Vikings and how Vikings came in like touch with the Saxons. There are great epic battles. There are 4 full glorious seasons you can binge on Netflix. I'm trying to take it slow and not ruin it because every episode is seriously so good, guys. It's well written, it's funny, it's dark. And what I really like about it is the aspects of magic and gods is played as if you know that they don't exist, you have an advantage in the world. And yet at points in time, some people find themselves slipping and they're like, crap, do I believe in gods? Maybe we should just make a sacrifice to Odin real quick just to keep everything good, you know? And it's that sort of like mind play that's just so good on the women. Watch The Last Kingdom and then find me on Twitter and talk about it so I have more people to talk about it with. It's so good.
All right. Well, it sounds like Ben has his homework cut out for him, and we can come back here and debate that show in a couple more seasons. So thank you all once again for joining us. And if you've ever watched Game of Thrones, you know that usually there's a lot of twists and false fronts and turns. And I was worried about that here today, but I had nothing to fear because our amazing tech crew made everything run so smooth. So thanks to everybody working hard for us at Rotten Tomatoes behind the scenes. You're the true heroes of the show. I am just the face that apparently is still, they're calling me the Queen of the North. So I'm going to ride that one out into the sunset. Thank you, Joelle. Thank you, Ben. For everybody here at Rotten Tomatoes, I'm Mark Ellis. Thanks for watching Binge Battle Game of Thrones Edition.